approached her. She was already married. The only problem, her husband had no idea he carried their marriage bond around his neck, carried the scent of sage and distant rain across the valley of Cedar Springs, as Silas Whitmore rode into town after 7 long years of wandering. His horse moved slowly, tired from the journey that had taken them across 3 territories, through mountain passes and desert stretches, all in search of something Silas had lost and never stopped looking for. The town had changed since he had last passed through. New buildings stood where empty lots had been. A church steeple rose against the painted sunset sky. Children played near the water well, and merchants closed their shops for the evening. But Silas was not looking at the buildings or the people going about their ordinary lives. His eyes scanned every face, every shadow, searching for the one face that had haunted his dreams for nearly a decade. He had been 23 years old when the fever took him. Lost in the wilderness between territories, abandoned by his traveling companions who feared the sickness would spread, Silas had crawled into a canyon and prepared himself to die. The last thing he remembered before darkness claimed him was the sound of footsteps and the gentle touch of cool water on his burning forehead. When he woke days later, he found himself in a small shelter made of branches and animal hide. A young Apache woman sat beside him, grinding herbs into a paste that she would spread on his chest to help him breathe. She spoke little English, and he spoke no Apache, but somehow they understood each other. Her name, she told him through gestures, and the few words they shared was Aiyana. It meant eternal blossom in her language. For 3 weeks, Aiyana nursed him back to health. She brought him water from the stream, hunted small game to make him broth, and sang soft songs in her native tongue that seemed to pull him back from the edge of death. Silas watched her move through the shelter with grace and purpose, and something in his broken heart began to mend in ways the fever had not damaged. On the night before he was strong enough to leave, Aiyana placed a small leather medicine pouch around his neck. Inside, she had placed sacred items from her people, herbs for healing, and something wrapped in soft deer hide that she made him promise never to open until he found his true path in life. Silas did not understand what she meant, but he promised. He also promised something else that night as they sat beneath a sky full of stars. He promised he would return for her. But life has a way of breaking promises that the heart makes. Silas rode back toward civilization and found himself caught in the middle of a territory dispute. He was conscripted into service as a guide for the army, then worked cattle drives that took him further and further from the canyon where Aiyana had saved his life. Every year he told himself he would go back. Every year something pulled him in another direction. Eventually, the years became a weight he carried alongside the medicine pouch that never left his neck. Now, at 30 years old, Silas had finally broken free from all obligations. He had saved enough money to buy land, build a home, and live the life he had dreamed about during all those lonely nights on the trail. But there was no life worth living without Aiyana. He had spent the last year searching for her, following rumors and whispers about Apache settlements and the scattered families who had been displaced by the changing times. The trail had led him here to Cedar Springs, where he had heard that a group of Apache families had settled on the outskirts of town in an uneasy peace with the townspeople. Among them, he was told, was a woman who had never married, a woman who was known as the healer, a woman whose name meant eternal blossom. Silas tied his horse outside the general store and walked toward the town square, where a gathering was taking place. The annual harvest festival had drawn people from all the surrounding areas, farmers, ranchers, merchants, and settlers, mingled with the Apache families who had been invited to participate in the celebration for the first time. It was a fragile peace, built on years of careful negotiation, but it was peace nonetheless. In the center of the square, tables had been set up with food and goods for trade. Music played from somewhere near the church steps, but what caught Silas's attention was the gathering near the old oak tree, where a large group of townspeople stood watching something with great interest. He pushed through the crowd and found himself at the edge of a circle where several young women stood. They were dressed in their finest clothes, some in calico dresses with ribbons in their hair, others in traditional Apache attire decorated with beadwork and feathers. Standing apart from the crowd were several men, ranchers and farmers by the look of them, who had come to the festival hoping to find wives in a land where women were scarce. This was not an auction or anything so crude. It was simply a tradition that had developed over the years, a way for unmarried people to meet under the watchful eyes of the community. The men would approach the women they wished to court, and if the woman accepted, they would walk together around the square and talk. If a connection was made, courtship would begin. If not, there were no hard feelings. Silas stood frozen at the edge of the circle. His eyes moved across the faces of the women, searching, hoping, fearing that he had come too late, that Aiyana had married, had moved away, had forgotten him entirely. And then he saw her. She stood at the far edge of the group, slightly apart from the others. Her hair was longer than he remembered, woven into two braids that fell past her shoulders. Her face had matured from the young woman he had known into something even more beautiful, shaped by years of life and experience. But her eyes were the same, those dark, gentle eyes that had watched over him through fever dreams and pulled him back from death. Aiyana, she had not seen him yet. She was looking down at her hands, which were folded in front of her. Silas understood immediately that she did not want to be here, that she was only participating because her people expected it, because the elders hoped she would finally accept a suitor. After years of refusing every man who had approached her, the other men in the circle were already moving. One approached a blonde woman in a blue dress. Another walked toward a young Apache woman who smiled shyly at his approach. The crowd murmured with approval and interest, watching the delicate dance of courtship unfold. Silas did not move. He stood there, his heart pounding so hard, he thought it might burst from his chest. What if she did not remember him? What if too many years had passed? What if she had given up on the promise he had broken? Then, as if she felt his gaze upon her, Aiyana looked up. Their eyes met across the crowded square, and the world around them seemed to fall away. The music faded. The voices of the crowd became distant murmurs. There was only Aiyana, standing in the soft glow of the setting sun, and Silas, standing at the edge of everything he had ever wanted. He saw recognition flash across her face. He saw something else too, something that made his breath catch in his throat. He saw hope. After all these years, after all the broken promises and silent nights, she still had hope. Silas began to walk. He did not look at any of the other women. He did not acknowledge the murmurs of the crowd or the surprised glances of the other suitors. He walked straight across the circle, past the rows of waiting women, past the curious onlookers, until he stood directly in front of Aiyana. The crowd had fallen completely silent. Everyone was watching now, waiting to see what this stranger would do, what this Apache woman would say. The other suitors had stopped their approaches. Even the music had ceased. Silas looked at Aiyana, and Aiyana looked at Silas. He did not speak. There were no words that could capture what he felt in that moment. No language that could express the depth of his regret or the magnitude of his love. Instead, he reached up and pulled the medicine pouch from beneath his shirt, the same pouch she had placed around his neck 7 years ago, worn smooth by years of never leaving his body. Aiyana's eyes filled with tears. Her hand rose to her mouth as she saw what he still carried. Then, slowly, deliberately, Silas untied the small bundle wrapped in deer hide that he had never opened, the one Aiyana had told him to keep sealed until he found his true path. The crowd leaned forward with curiosity. Aiyana's tears began to fall freely down her cheeks. Inside the deer hide was a small lock of hair, braided carefully and bound with a tiny leather cord. But there was something else too. Pressed against the braid was a folded piece of paper, yellow with age, covered in words that Silas could not read, because they were written in Apache. Aiyana reached out and took the paper from his trembling hands. She unfolded it carefully, then looked up at him, with eyes so full of emotion that Silas felt his own tears beginning to fall. An elder from the Apache family stepped forward from the crowd. She was an old woman with silver hair and kind eyes, and she spoke softly to Aiyana in their language. Aiyana nodded, then handed the paper to the elder. The old woman looked at the paper, then at Silas, then at the crowd that waited in breathless silence. "This paper," the elder said in careful English, "was written by Aiyana 7 years ago, on the night before the young man with fever left her camp. She asked me to write her words because she did not know English writing. She placed it in the medicine pouch because she knew he would carry it always. And she knew that one day, when he opened it, he would understand." The elder paused, looking at Silas with an expression of deep respect. "The paper says, I give you this medicine not only for your body, but for your spirit. Inside this pouch, I have placed a lock of my hair, which means I have given you a piece of my soul. In my people's tradition, this is a marriage bond. From the moment you carry this, you carry me with you. I will wait for your return. I will wait forever if I must, but know this, my love. You already carry my heart. You have been my husband from the moment I chose to save your life. Come back to me when you are ready. I will be here." The crowd gasped. Silas stood frozen, the weight of understanding crashing over him like a wave. For 7 years, he had been carrying a marriage bond. For 7 years, Aiyana had considered herself his wife. For 7 years, she had refused every suitor because she was already bound to him, and he had not known. He had kept a promise never to open the pouch, and in doing so, he had not understood the depth of her commitment, the sacrifice of her waiting, the faith she had placed in a man who had wandered the wilderness. While she remained true, Silas fell to his knees before Aiyana. The crowd murmured, some wiping tears from their own eyes. The Apache families watched with solemn understanding, knowing the significance of what they were witnessing. "I did not know," Silas whispered, his voice breaking. "I did not know what you had given me. I thought I broke my promise to you, but you never stopped keeping yours." Aiyana knelt down before him, taking his face in her hands. She spoke for the first time, her voice soft and musical, carrying the accent of her people, but clear enough for him to understand. "You came back," she said simply. "That is all that matters. You came back." Silas reached up and took her hands in his, pressing them against his chest, where his heart thundered beneath the medicine pouch. "I looked everywhere for you," he said. "I crossed mountains and deserts. I searched every settlement and followed every rumor. I would have searched for the rest of my life if I had to." Aiyana smiled through her tears. "I knew you would find me. The spirits told me to wait, and I trusted them. I trusted you." The elder stepped forward again, this time with a warm smile on her weathered face. In the eyes of our people, she announced to the crowd, these two have been married for 7 years. Today, they are finally together. Today, the spirits have kept their promise. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. The music started again, this time more joyful than before. People came forward to congratulate them, to offer blessings and well wishes. The other suitors nodded with respect, understanding that they had witnessed something rare and beautiful. But Silas and Aiyana did not notice the crowd. They stood in the center of the square, holding each other close, making up for 7 years of separation, with an embrace that spoke louder than any words could. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Silas led Aiyana away from the celebration. They walked to the edge of town, where the land stretched out before them in endless possibility. I bought land, Silas said, pointing toward the distant hills. I bought it for you, for us. I did not know if I would ever find you, but I bought it anyway, because I could not imagine building a home with anyone else. Aiyana leaned her head against his shoulder. Show me. They walked together into the twilight, leaving behind the town and the festival and the years of loneliness. The medicine pouch rested against Silas's heart, no longer a mystery, but a testament to the power of love that waits and love that returns. On a hill overlooking the valley, they stopped and watched the moon rise over their future. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called out to its mate, and the wind carried the scent of sage and new beginnings. I will spend the rest of my life making up for the years I was not here, Silas promised. Aiyana turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. You do not need to make up for anything, she said. Every moment of waiting was worth it for this moment right now. I would wait 1,000 more years if it meant I could stand here with you tonight. Silas pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her as if he would never let go again. No more waiting, he whispered. No more wandering. From this moment forward, we walk together. Aiyana smiled, and in her smile was the peace of a promise finally kept, a love finally found, and a future finally beginning. They stood together on that hill until the moon rose high above them, two hearts that had been separated by time and distance, finally beating as one. And in the medicine pouch that rested against Silas's heart, the lock of Aiyana's hair remained, a symbol of the bond that had connected them across Raz and miles. He had looked at everyone in that square. He had seen all the faces, all the possibilities, all the paths his life could have taken. But without a word, he had chosen her. He had chosen the woman who had saved his life and claimed his heart. He had chosen the Apache woman who had waited 7 years for a promise to be kept. And in choosing her, Silas finally found the true path that Aiyana had spoken of on that night so long ago. The path had always led back to her. It just took him 7 years to find his way home.